Aloha everyone! I'm so honored to introduce you all to the woman who introduced me to the world of circus, my circus coach, Miss Cheryl Lindley! Cheryl is my nominee for the Under Armour Power in Pink. Although Cheryl did not suffer from breast cancer, Cheryl is the true definition of a survivor, and if you have read any of the stories that I've already wrote about her on my profile, you will know a little bit more about her story. And she has had many traumatic life experiences, and she is still here, still training, still performing and sharing her aloha and light with the world. And I think that is the true definition of a female athlete. And I'm so excited for all of you to hear her story, and I think it will inspire you and motivate you to always keep pushing and doing your best. 3 years ago, Cheryl found out that she had hepatitis C. And at that point, she began to start a medication called interferon, which is a lot like chemotherapy, and it affected her energy level. And she's a professional international performer in the circus world, so she still had to train and perform while undergoing this treatment. And I would like to ask you, what was that experience like when you found out you were diagnosed with hepatitis C, and once you started the medication, how did it affect your life and your training as an athlete and as a performer?
Well, I found out I had hepatitis C at my 50-year-old checkup, and they said my enzymes were high, and they did some more testing, and they found out I had hepatitis C. At that point, the only option Western medicine with that is the interferon ribavirin treatment. So I waited until I had finished a gig. I had a lot of contracts, so I didn't want to start. When I came back from a month of Korea, by then I was 51, I started treatment. And at first it was just a little difficult. And then the brain memory issues were the most difficult, because I would forget where I was. Or I forget my lines. But since I'm a clown, I could always make it work. And I managed to pull it off. I only missed one show, which was a show with Taylor Swift, but I did make the costumes for a reveal. So in all that difficult time, I made it through most shows. It was only because my doctors wouldn't let me travel because my blood count was so low.
And were you continuing to train while you were on that medication? How did it affect your daily routine? Because I know you were exercising a lot all the time.
It's affected it quite a bit. The first few months it wasn't bad, but as I got sick, I couldn't really do anything. It affected my mind, my brain, my skin, my nausea. So I went from being an active woman to a hamster on the couch. And that was a few months of just existing. I think a plant had more in a relationship with the world than I did, because I couldn't even think to talk. I would forget what I was saying. And then I've been slowly coming back from that. So I stopped medicine a little over 2 years ago, and I had severe side effects. Usually you don't lose your hair, for example, and I was bald for 2 years. I had side effects like lupus. And those are all slowly going away, and I'm slowly beginning to train again. So I'm at 3 days a week right now. And besides training people, which is a style of training, I mean, I work every day at my school, which is physical. But my own personal training is 3 days a week.
I also believe you're a survivor from your life experiences. And Cheryl has lost in her life many loved ones since she was a young woman. The first person I believe you lost was your first husband from AIDS?
Suicide.
From suicide.
And then I had my first clown partner from AIDS.
And then your first clown partner from AIDS. And then the most recent tragedy, her daughter passed away when she was 14. Now about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And that was a time that I think as a woman, as a young woman watching Cheryl, I really saw in my eyes and in my opinion what survival was about. How do you survive from a tragedy where you want to give up, and you're angry and you're upset and you feel like you've lost everything. And she definitely is here again, continuing to share her love and sharing her art of circus. Or what was that experience like, for one, and how would you compare the two in your own life with your personal health issue versus the emotional? And
so we'll start first with what it was like when Sophia was killed. It was a shock, a sudden shock to the system, and an unbelievable experience. And it was hard to imagine that the world just carried on. For me, it was so personally raw and unimaginable. I mean, how can the sun rise? How can the moon come up? Why are the stars here? It should all be shouting out no. And each breath of air like burned. So that was the spot of pain and suffering I started from. And then accepting, and that was really what helped. And then just facing all the different phases. Like there was a time where I was really angry. So then I painted the school bright yellow to bring in light. You know, just living with that, living with anger, living with fear, living with the unknown. You know, sometimes when we go through terror, like every time the phone rings, now what? And just accepting it. I mean, it was harder for me to watch my family suffer, watching me. I mean, my own personal suffering was horrendous. It really was. And then watching them watch me be sick and in pain and suffering was even more horrendous. And I think a lot of times we forget how hard it is on our caretakers, because they're powerless, you know, and so that was the journey for me.
What do you think the definition of a survivor is?
I think my father taught me about being a survivor. He was a diabetic, age 4, and he was one of the first kids saved from diabetes. And watching him live, I remember asking him, "Don't you hate shots?" And he goes, "Well, it's better than the alternative." Now, my daughter has diabetes. She got it at age 8. And that to me is a more poignant survival, because for me, I had a disease, I fought hard, you know, I didn't get over the disease, but the pain and the worst part's over, and I'm regaining my life. But people have a daily thing they live with. That's really surviving, because that's as good as it gets. And every day they have to deal with it. So I look to my dad and my daughter.
Do you have any advice for the Woman in the What's Beautiful challenge?
My advice is don't give up. You know, and if you didn't do it yesterday, you can always do it today. Or if you didn't do it in the morning, you could do it now. Or if you only did half, that's all right, because you did half. And I always tell people when they come to train, the day you don't want to train is the best day to train, even if you just do a little, because you keep it going and you keep that rhythm and pattern going in your body.
So we all have to continue to train hard, ladies. This is only the beginning. Remember, on those days where you really don't want to do anything at all, just get off your butts and do at least something to keep the momentum going. Thank you so much for listening. And Cheryl, again, is my nomination for Under Armour's Power in Pink. I think you all will be inspired. You're beautiful. Aloha.
Ciao.
Clignotant. Je tourne.
Not just any man, a strong and handsome man. Think I need music with this, please. That's it. Flamingo! Flamingo! Shake!
You know something to your mind. Your blouse so white, your skin so tan.
Que les motos ça va plus vite. Ils ont bien tort, car quand il pleut ils sont mouillés et dans mon auto, moi s'il fait froid j'ai toujours chaud.